So ladies, gentlemen, welcome to a brand new news video. Today, I want to start off briefly with the new trailer, the final trailer for Predator Badlands. And I think, right out the gate here, I think it looks really good. I mean, I remember from the first teaser that the reception was met with a bit of apprehension, but as more trailers have come out for this, the potential for some Predator-level carnage is, not just starting to show, but my God, is it here. Now, I know I haven't covered this a bunch on the channel, but lots of you have been asking me my thoughts on, like, Alien Earth, whether it be Prey, quite a while back, and you guys know that I want to cover more things like this on the channel, so I couldn't resist after this final trailer. So that, the new looks that we get at the new hunting ground, where essentially everything is going to kill you. Yeah, the Predator we're following, Deck, is going to be getting some pretty crazy moments, and that's one of the most compelling things about the premise of this movie. So in addition to all of the carnage, we're actually getting to see the making of one of these killing machines. We get the hints at the struggle Deck goes through in his desire, I guess you could say, to graduate to full hunter status, even in the beginning shots of that crash landing, where he just pounds the floor out of anger. I personally like that we get to read that from his face, which I know, again, like, people weren't too sure on at first when we got a look at Deck's face. But just given that Deck is a much younger hunter who is proving his worth, apparently, arriving to the planet to hunt the legendary behemoth called the Callisk, I don't really take an issue with not seeing an absolute brute version of a Predator in this movie. Again, like, don't forget, the premise surrounds seeing a young Predator's first hunt. Like, he's described as being the runt of the litter. He's even blind in one eye. He's thought of as less by his people, and he's pretty much shunned, even by his father, as, he strives to prove his unsupportive father wrong. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty unique angle, and this reflects that. And to me, that's a really original implementation into this world of aliens and predators that I definitely want to check out. And a lot of this information, as I was looking more into it, comes from bloodydisgusting.com, because they actually visited the set last summer and spoke to Dan Trachtenberg, who obviously is directing this movie, directed Prey and whatnot, and he said that he is the smallest of his clan and most seen as the weakest in a way. He is also involved in a very traumatic event at the beginning of the movie that he's taking the whole adventure to deal with. From the jump, you were just thrust into a really high-intensity physical and emotional situation with him that I think will really put you in his shoes, despite being a character that in another movie would be the silent gunman, like Mandalorian, a lone wolf and cub, or Man on Fire. Now, we also get to see Ellie Fanning playing a damaged synth, which is another intriguing aspect to this movie, as it's quite a random pairing, with even Dan Trachtenberg saying, "My pitch was that it was like a Chewbacca and C-3PO, the movie," which just sounds hilarious given that we do have her strapped to Deck's back. Now, not to mention, in this trailer, we get a look at a bunch of the other militaristic synths from Weyland-Yutani, supposedly collecting specimens who we're going to have Deck run into, which is also just how I think everyone is looking at the rating of this movie being a PG-13, and, how are they going to really get away with some of the violence you would want to see from a Predator movie being a PG-13? Well, that's because, and we've had Dan Trachtenberg talk about this as well, it's creatures and synthetics rather than outright human gore. Apparently, there's no humans in this movie, so even with the rating of this movie, they might be able to get away with way more than what you might think due to the opponents that Deck's up against. It's not exactly red blood spatter, but kind of green and purple from the monsters and synths. Now, granted, we haven't seen the film. I will say, as a fan of this franchise, it's pretty cool seeing how excited people are getting about this. After how popular Prey was with fans, seeing the franchise just continue down this avenue of exploring new ways of getting into the Predator world. I mean, obviously, we had that with Prey as well, but now seeing a bit more of a personal quest for Predator is pretty awesome. For him to just, most likely come out on top, but being provided with a decent movie's length. Well, I suppose it is 90 minutes. Would like it to be a bit longer, but also not surprising. Worth of carnage, absolute carnage, as a Predator Predator proves his worth, not to mention with some really badass weaponry featured, like that frickin' laser bow, which to me is just nuts. Can't wait to see that thing in action. That's some mighty popcorn chewing time, if you ask me. You know, that's all I'm going to say about it for now, because this isn't like a full trailer breakdown, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. So let me know your thoughts on the new look at Predator Badlands. But now moving over to some DC Studios news. And first of all, we have to talk about the whole Andy Muschietti thing. Because a lot of you, I did a live stream last night. I had quite a few people asking me there, but even in the comments of my recent videos, people were saying, Boba, what do you think about what we've learned from Andy Muschietti? So here, re-reported by DC Film News, they say Andy Muschietti reaffirms he's still attached to direct the upcoming DCU Batman film, The Brave and the Bold. Now, this is coming from Gotham2739 over on Twitter, and that account says, so in the early hours last Friday, I happened to meet Andy Muschietti at a bar after I attended a concert, and I did ask him some questions about The Brave and the Bold. So, let's just run through this, and I'm going to give my overall thoughts. So, now, this is either good news or bad news, depending on how you feel. He is still attached to direct the film. The film will not go into production soon, especially since the Batman Part 2 will be entering production next year. Now, as you all know, James Gunn revealed that a writer is attached, so I asked Andy if he's aware that a writer has been attached. I also didn't ask him who the writer is, because I'm not one of those scoopers. He is aware that a writer is attached, and I think he's aware of the story. I'm not sure if he mentioned the latter, because it was a pretty wild night for me, and that was all I asked him about Brave and the Bold. Overall, he was nice. I even asked for some advice as an aspiring filmmaker myself. So this is really just trudging up what we kind of already know. Some of you may remember that Andy Muschietti went on a couple of podcasts, I believe. And I think this was last year. Yeah, before I got married, I swear. Maybe I'm wrong, but and in that podcast, he was saying some things that basically brought up this whole conversation we're having right now, which is why I'm trying to say not much has really changed. I just think when stuff gets spoken about again, even by the same person, it feels like fresh news. You have pages re-reporting it like it's fresh news kind of thing. So, for example, where he said that he's still attached to direct the film, that hasn't technically changed, despite how many of you may think, well, officially he's still attached to direct the film, but when it actually comes to, push comes to shove, will he direct the film? Will DC Studios kind of cop out and be like, oh no, due to creative differences, we're going with this director instead? Right now, there is no way to prove that that's what Gunn's secret plan is, especially after they literally announced Andy Muschietti as the director. You can believe that all you want. You really may not like Andy Muschietti. This is another thing that I guess, always gets brought up. So, I guess it just remains to be seen. Are they going to do that? And I think most people are convinced that DC Studios' James Gunn will change course at some point in time. But for now, technically on paper, he is still attached to direct the film. Nothing's really changed there. And I don't think anything will change for a while, because as he goes on to say, the film will not go into production soon, especially since the Batman Part 2 will be entering production next year. This, again, matches what I was referencing earlier on the podcast that he talked about a while ago. There's a certain strategy over at DC Studios Andy Muschietti spoke about, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he absolutely mentioned in how, they're taking their time to work on Brave and the Bold. They want to get the Batman Part 2 out the gate first. I still don't think that this negates the idea of Gunn wanting to put Batman in a project before he gets his own movie. Again, that's where we could get into speculation about, could he appear in Clayface, even if very minimally, or in a Creature Commandos way, or maybe more of a proper introduction before his own movie in Man of Tomorrow, that kind of thing. But mostly, we already know that The Brave and the Bold and the Batman Part 2 will not release in the same calendar year. So basically, 2028 at the earliest. At the very earliest, right? And overall, with the rest of what he says, just like he's he's aware that a writer is attached. He has kind of some sense of the story. That's not unusual. Some people like to use that as evidence of the fact that he's not working actively alongside, that's not an unusual thing. Directors will often come in, take a look at the script, have a pass at the script, and be like, okay, do I want to direct this? If, Gunn and Safran are still happy with me directing it, if I agree to direct it, then I'm going to direct it, kind of thing. In the meantime, the team that are developing The Brave and the Bold, or the writer alongside James Gunn, they're the people who are hands on with it until the script is complete, presented to the director. The director gets a little bit of a kind of spin on it, a similar way to like James Watkins had a bit of a pass at Mike Flanagan's Clayface script. And then, yeah, but all in all, ladies and gentlemen, don't want to like waste too much time on this other than we don't really know too much more than what we knew before. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Do you think, like, what if Gunn actually sticks to his guns and is like, yeah, you know what? We're going to prove you all wrong, and the script, as long as that is as strong as we can make it, like a really good script. So imagine a script way better than the Flash movie. And then you put Andy Muschietti on it. Will Gunn double down and be like, well, now you're going to see how a good product can be made with everything really kind of carefully considered and the right kind of bullet being put in the chamber of Muschietti's gun that he's ready to fire. Whereas the Flash movie maybe was a bit of a, you know, dodgy bullet, perhaps? Or do you think that him saying he's attached is all kind of politeness on the surface level for really one day, so nobody really gets embarrassed? Like, you could just say, oh yeah, Andy Muschietti is attached to other projects and he's too busy to pursue Brave and the Bold, but really they planned that all behind the scenes, so it didn't have to be this big PR disaster as to why Muschietti wasn't chosen to direct The Brave and the Bold. Do you know what I mean? Do you think it's something like that? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, the next story, we're kind of moving over briefly to DC Elseworlds, and this is something that I didn't expect to hear about. Like, I mean, I don't know when I expected to hear about it, but it just didn't sound too good the last we heard an update from it. And that is the DC Elseworlds Constantine 2 with Keanu Reeves. Now, in an interview with Keanu, they took the opportunity to ask about Constantine 2, and he says, look, fingers crossed, another draft of the script came in, we're going to take it to the studio, and hopefully they like it too. So the reason why I find that interesting, because some of you may be like, well, what's the big update here? I didn't know if, like, honestly, this was one of the things that Gunn axed. Remember how he said he killed a movie, and sure, you could say that was the authority. Gunn basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, like, everyone wanted to do it, the script was there, you know, everyone that was ready to go, basically, but it just wasn't working, so he killed it. What we heard about Constantine from the guy who played Lucifer, excuse me, I can't remember the name right now, but basically he said that he spoke to Keanu and he didn't like where it was at. It seemed to be the case that maybe, to me, the way it reads, it's like they look at Keanu Reeves and they look at his badass John Wick movies, this, that, and the other, and it's like they kind of wanted to replicate that onto a Constantine sequel. So I don't know what that would have exactly have been, but imagine John Wick infused with Constantine. And Keanu read that latest draft at the time and was like, no, I don't really, you know, it seems to be focusing more on spectacle. It's not a character-driven movie. And Keanu, yeah, sure, he's very much so known for his John Wick, his Matrix, and stuff like that. But I think, you know, you can't blame the guy for wanting to try and, hey, look, we might be doing a Constantine sequel. I want this to be one of my maybe more serious character study, character-driven parts, if it ever gets made. And that's the last we heard of it. He didn't like the latest iteration. So now he's saying, well, another draft came in, and he must be kind of happy with it if he's saying we're going to take it to the studio, and hopefully they like it too. And that's where we're at. So basically, there is a draft that they're now presenting, that Keanu is presenting, because he's happy with it compared to the last one that we heard about last year. This is big news because this will probably be their stab at, like, okay, this is it. It gets greenlit or it doesn't. Now, this is where I feel like, will this movie get made even if there's a script that Keanu likes? That there's nothing that guarantees that. I think Constantine 2 has always been kind of like swimming against the tide, so to speak, with regards to, you know, whenever I talk about this in a video, and maybe you guys are going to say a similar thing down in the comments, people are more often than not, like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Constantine fans out there of Keanu's iteration of the character, but most of you say, I don't know about this. Do we really kind of, like, you know, need it? I prefer a Constantine in the DCU, that kind of thing. And when it comes to Elseworlds movies, we know that James Gunn said there's an incredibly high bar, because the way to look at it is that any DC film that gets made, for the most part, will be like DCU mainline canon, and they're going to make it a part of the DCU. If you want to come to me and pitch a movie like Joker or The Batman, So an Elseworlds movie. To get that greenlit and to justify that getting made and us not focusing on it being a DCU story that contributes to our mainline universe, you need to have an insanely high bar script, like, you know, Matt Reeves level, auto-driven vision, Joker level, Todd Phillips, how successful that was. And will Constantine 2 meet that bar? I think most people are doubtful. When it comes to the whole argument of, but I'd rather have a DCU Constantine, I'm always of two minds whenever I hear that kind of thought, because look, there's nothing guaranteeing that we would get a DCU Constantine in the next 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. It could be like a DCU Chapter 2 plan. So my mind with this has always been, I would be happy for Constantine 2 to be greenlit. Don't forget, there's a massive kind of like factory line of projects that we've still got to release. Whether that's, you know, they're still working on Paradise Lost. That's still going along. Brave and the Bold. Lanterns is releasing soon. Supergirl's releasing next summer. Clayface. We've got Booster Gold. That is still being worked on. Swamp Thing eventually. There's other scripts that are also being introduced into that original lineup, such as Wonder Woman. That's being prioritized. There's also the Titan script, which was being worked on. Not abandoned, but shelved for now. Like, there's all of these things that, sure, you could argue that the character of Constantine could pop up in one of these other projects, but for me, I would prefer that character, if we wouldn't get a solo movie in the DCU, to be a part of a Justice League Dark kind of thing. That way you can bring in Zatanna and, you know, maybe it's like ripples off after the Swamp Thing movie. But that, you see what I mean? That could be like 2031, 2032 kind of thing into the DCU's overarching plan. So having a Keanu Reeves Constantine 2 come out, I don't know, 2028 isn't like, you know, a red flag to me in terms of, oh my God, this is preventing us from getting a DCU Constantine. So I'm kind of like, yeah, sure. If it's good enough to, you know, for Gunn to want to risk it getting made, like investing and actually believing that it's good enough to warrant the sequel, then I also feel like, yeah, as a fan of the first one, why not? Why not do it, man? Like, I would believe in it and have faith in it, let's say, and hope that it does well. The one thing I would say is give them a reduced budget, because you see what they've done with Clayface. Now, I'm not saying that Constantine 2 needs to have like a 40-50 mil budget or whatever Clayface at, because that is remarkably fascinating to me, but it's also very low. But I'm also obsessed with it because it breeds such creativity when you're working with such limited budget, right? I think Constantine should, if it gets greenlit, have like a super duper low budget. And that way, also, maybe Keanu gets away with it because it could be more of a character-driven thing. Now, I know Constantine's quite VFX-heavy, but I do think that they could play around with that. I really do. But with all of that said and done, ladies and gentlemen, you know, after hearing all of my thoughts on it, does that change your mind at all about the pursuit of an Elseworlds Constantine 2? Or would you still be like, nah, just chuck it to the wind, man. I'm not really fussed about it. Now, this week, guys, kind of a big week for the DCU because we know how much or how big, how crazy this Peacemaker finale is supposedly meant to be. It's meant to be setting up Man of Tomorrow. Gunn himself is still even going out of his way to make things seem pretty big with what I'm about to read out in just a second. I don't want to be a party pooper. I'm still trying to temper expectations because I just feel like with, you know, the way things are these days, the inevitability is people will go straight to like social media and be like, oh, was that it? All of this hype for that? For me, I'm just like, okay, yeah, let's just see what happens. And then if something pretty cool happens, I think it's pretty cool. Like, that's the way I would advise going into this rather than thinking like Brainiac's going to just be floating like Master Yoda right up to the lens and be like, I'm the Man of Tomorrow villain. Like, I just don't want to go expecting something like that right away. But starting off with this section of tidbit news, we have this user say, looks like who or whatever made the QUC is smart, even smarter than Lex Luthor. Interesting. Gunn said, in reply, definitely advanced, non-human. Now, people are taking this to mean, oh my God, this means this is a reference to the Man of Tomorrow villain being Brainiac. He made the QUC. He's the one. I don't want to get that far ahead. Some people are also kind of thinking maybe this doesn't mean it's Brainiac. Again, I think we can't reach this far with Gunn's reply there. It could just be, yeah, whoever made the QUC was a non-human advanced person, clearly. But then again, yes, we have had kind of hints that the QUC could ripple throughout some DCU projects. And, you know, given that we've got Man of Tomorrow and there's going to be a bigger threat that unites Luthor and Superman to team up against, then, you know, it could pertain to that main villain. And if that main villain's Brainiac, well, you never know, right? And I had a suggestion from Silhouetted Anime, a shout out to him, on my live stream yesterday. And I don't want to read into this too much, but he was like, hey, you know that kind of like little creature alien thing that sounded kind of like a monkey or whatever when Augie shot it in Peacemaker season 2 episode 4, was it? What if that was Brainiac's Koko, the kind of monkey? Because Koko was kind of like a alien-y kind of monkey. And then when you look at Koko, it's like, you know what? Now, in Peacemaker, that little alien thing, before it got completely full-out Vats headshotted by Augie, it didn't look like a straight-up monkey. But again, neither does Koko per se, but he kind of sounded like through the trees like a monkey. And could that have been our, like, first very minimal kind of clue to who the Man of Tomorrow villain could have maybe have been? Now, I know he didn't really have antennas like Brainiac's Koko does, but it's certainly... Now, you could be saying, but well, why was he carrying the QC? I don't know. Maybe he was running an errand for Brainiac. I feel like that would be kind of a Gunn thing to do. I know this is like a crazy long shot. It's just something I was like, you know what? I might as well mention it just in case, because... even if this isn't true, like, what the heck was that alien race? Maybe it was just, like, Gunn being like, okay, insert alien race here. Either way, just wanted to chuck that one out there. Might be nothing. Let me know if you think there is anything more to this. Are people just reading into it? Are we reading into it too much right now? Or do you think the definitely advanced non-human could reference the Man of Tomorrow thread? And do you think it maybe isn't Brainiac and it could be someone like Mongol or somebody else? Now, I guess, you know, it also depends on the version of Brainiac, whether he is kind of like a cyborg, like, or android, full-on like Brainiac drone kind of thing. To me, that's still non-human. But carrying on here with these teases, Gunn says, next week, when has anything we've ever done actually been for the good of the people? That's what Economo said in the trailer for the finale. And Gunn says, I can't wait for you to see it. I promise it is nothing. He says, I promise it is nothing like anything anyone expects or has guessed. That is fascinating. And getting in some brief kind of like, I don't know if I want to quite call this predictions, but let me know your predictions for the finale. Like, what's your bingo card list, so to speak? When it comes to me, are there certain things that I'm kind of low-key predicting? Like, will we see Lex Luthor again? Lex Luthor is the co-lead of Man of Tomorrow. Now, sure, I could be wrong, though. Like, so if we just cross that off my list and I am wrong, well, the finale could tie into Man of Tomorrow through showing or hinting at the villain, or actually, yeah, full out showing him without showing Lex Luthor. But I've always envisioned some kind of hint there, but also flag going back to Luthor, maybe even with David Corenswet's Superman to be like, we need your help even more, maybe. Now, yeah, that reminds me, David Corenswet's Superman. Do I think he could be in it? Maybe. I know Gunn said that Corenswet was very jealous of Nicholas Hoult getting on the set of Peacemaker, but that's the kind of thing that could be said to throw us off the scent of how when they were both filming at the same time, yeah, Superman could have filmed like a little very quick scene. Now, as for the next thing, will we actually get the Man of Tomorrow threat revealed? Well, kind of, I think, but will it be right up to the lens of the camera like you're seeing me right now? So let's just say it is Brainiac. Will we see him walk through the doorway? Will we see Mongol walk through the doorway? Will we see whatever the threat is? And that is that kind of in our face, which I still wouldn't rule out, just because even if Gunn did that, I don't think it would be doing too much, just in the sense of how it would really flood the minds of fans like myself and you with discussion of what this could mean for the Man of Tomorrow movie now. That's kind of cool, a cool generation of discussion and hype in a way, if it's something worthy, obviously, to get hyped about. Or is it going to be the more ambiguous tease, which is so blatantly obvious as to who it is, but he's not gonna show the design right away. I think the latter is more likely, unless he's really decided on a firm design for whatever the threat is, which means he would have had to have really planned this, had the costume made, had the suit made, or whatever it is. More of an ambiguous tease would be a safer one, because as you're getting into pre-production and the costume design, the suits designs, the concept art and everything, you don't have to commit to that in the Peacemaker Season 2 finale. So I think we will obviously find out a major hint as to who the villain is, to the point of where it might be indisputable as to who it is. But will we actually see them talk on screen kind of thing? I don't know. Maybe they can do it with a close-up or something like that. Who will the cameo be? Like, if there is another big cameo, because a lot of people are like, I thought episode 6, 7, and 8 was supposed to be crazy with cameos. And I was kind of like, I think I replied to that comment and be like, well, technically, I mean, episode 6 there was a cameo, Lex Luthor, but yes, we probably were expecting something beyond Luthor. So could this be Jaime Reyes' Blue Beetle? I don't know how or why he would be involved, unless they want to like connect to the end of the Blue Beetle movie with Ted Kord being trapped in a different dimension and somehow Jaime Reyes is like in the QC. I don't know how he would have popped in there. Like, so this is where like I'm losing any sense of logic there. But they could do something like that. Or is it like the fabled Kumail Nanjiani Booster Gold? But again, like, why would he be brought in? Like, what's the relevance there? But of course, just because I can't think of one right now, it doesn't mean that Gunn hasn't thought of a way. That's one thing I want to say to anyone who's going to be thinking about this in the comments. Just because something may seem like it doesn't make sense with like a fan theory for a cameo for the finale of Peacemaker Season 2, it just could mean that we haven't thought about what it actually is and why that person could be appearing and how Gunn made that work. So am I expecting Loki some kind of cameo, some kind of bigger thing from another character? I think it wouldn't be outrageous of me to say yes. I think there should be probably someone. I don't include Corenswet's Superman or Lex Luthor in that, by the way, if they appear again in the finale. I think they could, I'm not saying they are a given, but I'm just saying, you know, that wouldn't surprise me at all. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on today's news stories. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts down below. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button, the hype button if you have it available in your location. Consider subscribing, of course, for more videos just like this. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.